Hello,
Great.
everyone. Thanks for thanks for coming to our latest entry to our Vermont Fresh Network webinar series. Um, my name is Tara Purr. I'm the Communications Director of Vermont Fresh Network, and today we'll be talking websites and the importance of websites with Holly Mechanic of Flavor Plate. You know, we, websites have been around for many years now, and we all know it's an important aspect of our business or organization, and a large part of our the way we communicate with our visitors and our customers. But what is the goal of a website? That's what I want to talk about today, and Holly she's the expert.
Hi, everyone. My name is Holly Mechanic, and I'm one of the founders of Flavor Plate. Flavor Plate is a turnkey website solution for the food industry, food-related businesses. And thanks for having me here today, Tara. I'm excited to talk to you guys and talk a little bit about what I know about websites, and also, answer any questions if possible. So what you might be thinking off the top of your head is that you've never heard of Flavor Plate, which is not uncommon. If you think of a comparable service like Squarespace, which you probably are familiar with, we are similar to Squarespace, only much, much smaller. We are a subscription-based platform, so we use templates, and we include website hosting, among other services, gift card sales, and that kind of thing. We are focused on restaurants particularly, but also, like I said, other food-related industries. And I know we might have some small farms on the call today, so we can speak to that as well. We have about 60 restaurants in the state of Vermont, but we're also across the country and in Canada and internationally as well. So there are really no barriers because it's the web, and we can work with anyone. In what separates Flavor Plate a little bit from some of our competitors, which of course there are a lot, are that we are sort of more committed towards the local food scene. We are members of the Chefs Collaborative. We support the Vermont Fresh Network, as evidenced by this phone call today. We also donate to Farm Aid through 1% for the Planet. So we are invested in all restaurants, but really we're interested in supporting those who are supporting local growers and really committed towards a more sustainable a way of doing business. And so if you are working with a local food producer, or you have those types of relationships, we offer discounts on our services because we just really want to commit to those people and help them be successful, because we do feel like it's really important. So that's sort of a quick intro to Flavor Plate. Moving on, the reason why we decided to create this platform, so I myself have a background in the restaurant industry and also in the tech industry, and my co-founder is a website designer and a website consultant. So we saw this need, we identified a need going back to 2011, where a lot of restaurants needed a very simple solution. So in general, food-related businesses, their needs are very simple. And so we wanted to give them something accessible and something affordable and something they can feel comfortable using on their own. And one of the things we are really happy to be able to do is to include our phone number. And that seems like a small thing, but it's nice to be able to pick up the phone, call a live person, get your questions answered. And some of our, larger competitors, that's just something they're not able to offer. So we like connecting with our customers. We encourage those phone calls. The web has really evolved over time. So back then in 2011, many restaurants, when they were thinking about creating a new site, they were getting estimates for custom design, and it could be thousands of dollars. So now everything's moved in the turnkey direction, which just means basically that you don't have to hire a designer. You don't necessarily have to know anything about programming. It's plug and play. And that brings the cost down significantly because you're not recreating something every time. You're using what's already built and already in place. Something else we do at Flavor Plate is we offer an assisted setup, which a lot of our customers use because they are very busy and they just want to kind of expedite the process and come up and have a really professional looking site. So we take all of their content, all of their assets, and we drop it into one of our templates and hand them over a site that's completely finished and ready to go. We are also, because we are just speaking with one audience, which is the food industry, it allows our platform to be really concise and really clear in our on the admin side. So when somebody logs in, they know exactly what each feature is. And our features are very specific to this one industry because we want our goal to have our customers be autonomous. We want them to be comfortable logging in, doing what they need to do, not have to rely on anybody for assistance, really. I mean, there's always cases where they need help, but for the most part, they're very independent. So hopefully I haven't lost anyone yet. Are you still there?
Something, yeah, I haven't interrupted, but is there something unique to the, as regards websites and website design and you know, the strategy unique to the food industry, food and farms and restaurants?
I would say, in general, yes. There's really a lot of emphasis on the photography because we are so visual, and with food and, you know, also with crops, a lot of it does come down to how it looks and how convincing, you know, how appealing, how much you can get that emotional connection with your visitor. So photography is really important, and then just keeping things super simple. That's the other way the web has kind of moved in the direction of simplicity. It used to be all about the bells and whistles with music and all these other things that were really, you know, people were looking for, and now it's just like give the customer information they need quickly. So everything has kind of transitioned over to the mobile being the top priority with the, you know, proliferation of cell phones. Everybody's on their phone, and so with that comes, you know, everything has to load a little faster. Everything has to be really scannable. All the buttons have to be, you know, everything has to be done by touch. And so you really want to keep that in mind when you're thinking about the content you display and, you know, having all those, all the information they need really one click away so that they're not having to go through a whole series of pages and steps to get the information they need. So yes, mobile. And one of the other things behind what we're hoping to do is knowing our market and who, you know, what the turnover is like in the restaurant industry, but also I believe in the farm industry, just new staff every year probably. We want to keep this learning curve really small so that when somebody, you know, when an old person leaves and a new person comes on board, that person is empowered to jump in there, figure out what needs to be done on the website, if need be, make changes, make edits. And, you know, they're just the learning curve we want to be as small as possible because there just really isn't the time. What we know about restaurant owners and also small farms is that they're, in general, not very tech savvy. They have very small profit margins and they're super busy. So we try to work under those constraints. And just gonna go on to the next one here. So
do you want to, do you want to show your screen? Do you have a present, the PowerPoint? Do you want to show that or?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you not able to see my PowerPoint?
That's okay. But I would also say to everyone too, you can share, I'll just keep talking, take the screen. I would also say too that, because I've run into this before, working with clients and just in consulting with them, and that basically have more than one person know how to use the website. Have more than one person know how to change pictures, use text, etc. Because You never know when someone's going to leave or if someone's going to be on vacation and something is up there. But and I would also say even, and I don't mean to cut into what you're saying, but I would also say it's great to just make a binder, like a 3-ring binder. Step 1, this is how you add an image. Step 2, this is what you do. But just keep it in a safe place, because you never know when you need to update something and the person who usually does it isn't around.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And sorry I thought I was sharing my screen before, so I've had my PowerPoint up, and I apologize for that. I don't know if you were just looking at my face or, okay. So yes, having the ability to have continuity when staff changes happen is really, really time saving, and it's just makes the whole process a whole lot smoother, and frustration wise and everything. And that's definitely the goal, is to have that continuity and keep track of all the important information, like you said, somewhere safe, so that people can figure out what needs to be done, and they have that login information, and they know what the website, admin is, and all that kind of thing. So I presume that, people are going to be thinking about, they're probably in different stages. They may be creating a website for the first time, or maybe they have a website, but it's older. And so they're all at different stages in their planning in terms of where they're getting started. But oftentimes I find that there are several things that sort of help people put the process off, whether it's they don't know if they can afford it, they don't have the time that it takes to dedicate to getting it up and running, they have a fear of technology, or they might just think their current site is adequate, and so they don't necessarily need to change it. And to that, I would just say that technology is always evolving, and expectations are always evolving. So, what we used to think was a perfectly acceptable website obviously doesn't apply anymore. And just as an example, going back several years, mobile was definitely on the radar, but now mobile is essential. And not only just having a mobile website, but also having a responsive website. And basically what that means is that if you want to do a quick test to see if your website is responsive, you just pull it up on your browser. You grab a corner of the browser window, if you can see this.
Yep.
And you scale it down to the size of a tablet. So what happens if you have a responsive website is that the navigation model changes here to what's called a hamburger. And the content all scales, the photos scale. And the same thing happens if you keep going. This is now a phone size. So everything stays adjusted in response to the screen size. So this is what Google is saying is the best practice right now. And you may have a mobile version of your website, but the responsive part is key. And you really want to be like in good standing with Google, because they sort of are calling all the shots at this point. So that's just one example of how you may have a site. You may feel like it's adequate at this point in time, but again, going for the most current technology. Speed. So we kind of touched on this, but load time is really important as well. And you want to be testing your site and make sure it does load in the recommended amount of time, which is very, very quick, like 2 seconds or less, just because people have very short attention spans, and they've come to expect that, they're going to see things right away. And if they don't, they're more likely to leave your website and go on to another one.
Can you also, in that same vein, when we talk about speed and load times, we were just talking about the importance of the visual on food websites and images and high-res images. And like a super high-res image is a lot of file space. So that balance of having a beautiful image, but also having a fast load time.
Right. Yeah. Definitely there's a balance between having a nice high resolution image, but also having it optimized properly for the web, so that you do reduce that load time, and you're not, dragging down the load time of your website. So those are things that are built in to most website platforms these days, the turnkey type of website platform. Also, just something that's kind of coming up, which just speaks to the whole evolution of the web, but ADA compliance. So this is something that is the whole population of people with any kind of disability that are using the web more and more frequently. They're going to be penalizing people whose websites are not compliant. So that just makes you want to think about contrasting colors for people with a vision impairment, also font size, that kind of thing. There's a lot of different things that are kind of coming, to become more and more prominent, more and more aware, just things to think about on your website.
So when we talk about being penalized, we're talking about ranking, losing your ranking, basically.
Right.
Google search results. Right. So every time, let's say your website is, it's not mobile responsive, you get a little ding, basically, or it's not ADA compliance, you're like, you get further down, you don't get as many ranking points, or how would you explain it better?
Yeah. So, Google has obviously a very complex algorithm that sort of, figures out how each site is going to be ranked in the search results. And I would say there's a lot of factors involved in that. But definitely, if it's responsive, that works in your favor. If it has SSL, so that's another thing with another new requirement where security, having an SSL certificate, which basically means your site is hosted on a secure server. That used to be required if you were an e-commerce site and you were going to be having, secure transactions. But just this year, Google has said, now we want every website to be on a secure server. So that's yet another way that things are evolving. So not having the SSL is going to be a deterrent. If your site takes a long time to load, that's a deterrent. Things like that. When you're getting into restaurants, then you also, and maybe also farms, but then they also factor in reviews and that kind of thing. So it's this very complex algorithm. But generally speaking, Google wants you to have the best browsing experience possible. So they want to show you the website that's going to bring you the closest to what you've searched for, give you that solid, list of terms that you've searched for. And also they want you to, not go searching again. So they're going to try to match it as close as possible. And that's why they want these websites to all, meet their criteria. So one of the things I hear often from small businesses, which is totally understandable because it makes a lot of sense, is that they're going to have a friend help them with their website, or they're going to have an employee or even a relative help them out with their website. So I can understand why, for obvious reasons. There's cost savings there. They have familiarity with someone. Someone's probably willing to help them for free. So it's appealing. And what I would say in that case is, by all means, accept the help where and whenever you can get it. But also keep in mind that that person, if it's an employee, may end up ultimately leaving your business. If it's a friend, that person probably has a full-time job doing something else that's not your website. And if you need that person, you have questions, something breaks, or you need to know how to do something, you're going to want to have somebody that you can turn to and get those questions answered. And so there's a risk involved with using those personal connections to get your website built. And sometimes it doesn't always pay off, because that's just the nature of personal relationships. That's why I would recommend using a professional who, is going to be there and is going to be able to answer your questions in a timely manner. And that's their job, to stay on top of the technology and to be available to you.
And I know that we'll talk about it later. about security too, the importance of
Mhm.
because if you just have someone who kind of does your website, security is such an important part of development today.
Mhm.
But I know we'll bring that up later. So we'll talk
Yeah, definitely. So security, just to kind of touch on that, there's so many website platforms out there, but usually the bigger ones have a SSL, a security feature built into it. And if you are using more of an open source website platform like WordPress, which is extremely common, um, there are going to be, over time, there will be some security updates you have to make because it is an open source platform with a lot of people contributing. You're a little bit more susceptible to hacking. And so there are security patches and updates that have to be done on a regular basis. So that's something to think about going forward. Who is it, whether it's you or someone that a tech person that's going to help you, just to keep your website kind of up to speed and secure, because the last thing you want to have happen is a hack, and then someone is able to post things on your website that really you don't want there. Okay, so let's see here. So when you're thinking about, you've decided, okay, I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to either build a website or create a new, update mine or create a new one. One good place to start is to research your competitor sites, and not necessarily your direct competitors, although that's good, but just also, local businesses, to see what they're doing, how they might be different from you, and how you can differentiate your business from them, what you think they're doing well, what you don't like. That is a really good starting place to see, okay, I'm getting some ideas. You can take notes, because that's what your customers are going to be doing. They're going to be going from maybe website A to B to C, and, you want to see how you fall in line with those. So as you start going through the process of gathering content, these are some of the things you're going to want to think about. But photography, as we touched upon, is very, very important. And, I wouldn't necessarily say that you need to have a professional photo shoot, although if your budget allows, I would say that's a great place to splurge. But with the high quality photos that you can take on your phone these days, it's really usually fine to just go in that direction. It's definitely easier and more affordable. But think about the diversity of your photos as well. And just to show you an example of another client of ours, this is Waterworks. It's a local business. What I like about what they've done is they really do a good job of giving you the whole spectrum of what they offer. So obviously there's a beautiful patio, it's riverside dining, a nice photo of some food with depth perception, which just is an interesting angle. I like the fact they show the inside dining room. They also serve breakfast. They have a big cocktail program. So you really are able to get a snapshot of exactly what you're going to get when you get there. And that's just something to think about rather than focusing on, food, just kind of mix it up a little bit. I think it's also nice to bring in the human element when possible. So like, for instance, going over to Lunig's again, they've got food. They also have a person in the background. Now the focus is not on him, but still it allows you to kind of, have that human connection. And the same thing with this photo, which, they do a lot of outside dining and special events. So it kind of just tells more of the story, which I think is really important. So,
and also too, I would say that, showing, you were just talking about how, depth perception,
mm-hmm.
there's the image of the cocktail and bartenders in the background, going to a restaurant. I mean, people go to restaurants by themselves, but often you'll check out a website and like, oh, should I go here? And if you see people having a good time and, or just, it kind of, it helps the visitor make a connection to the experience that they may have, basically.
Right. Absolutely. I think it's compelling when you see that energy, and when you do, when you have a scene that's more lively, or, there's people, they're eating, they're laughing. I mean, it can be a little more challenging to get those photos because of the privacy issue. But if you're able to, I think that it brings life to your website, which is really nice. So, things to think about when you're thinking about the photography is depth of focus, like we just mentioned. Good lighting is really essential. Natural lighting, not the fluorescent lighting in the kitchen, preferably, but the natural light by a window. Point of view, so overhead shots, or more on the level shots, or from an angle, someone holding a food item. All those things can bring visual interest to the photography. Taking multiple shots of one thing so that you have options, some vertical, some horizontal, depending on where they're going to be used on the website, is important to think about. Some close up, some a little further back, so you can see the edges of the plate or the table setting, things like that. All these things are really important.
And I would also say too, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but when we talk about changing up the photos, if whether your business, your food farm, whether you have a professional photographer, which if we actually did a webinar with a professional photographer, so you can check out the VFN website for the resources and the video there.
Great.
But, for the viewers today, but I think that it's important to whether it's professional, a professional will do this, but even if it's not professionally taken, lighting is so important. But also, don't forget to take more than one image of your shot, of your picture, basically, because you never know when you need a vertical versus a horizontal, whether you can use it for Instagram, for Facebook. So it's always good to give yourself images to choose from, and in a seasonal way too, right?
Definitely. And that's something you want to just keep in mind when you, as you're maintaining your website over time, is to change those photos seasonally with what, that correspond with the ingredients, correspond with whether or not you're going to be sitting out on the patio or not. And that, maybe if it's around the holiday seasons, you want to, just those are great tools to help keep your website feeling really current. If the photos reflect what's actually going on with people.
Visitor, basically, they come to, if like there's snow outside right now and you have a spring shot, it can be kind of a visual disconnect with, what it is at the moment and your website. So it's
yeah, exactly. So some other things to think about when you're gathering content, just to, to make the whole process smooth, it helps to do a little bit of homework up front. So collecting those photos, building out your menu, obviously. If you're a farm, you can talk about the produce that you have in season and also what's coming up. Having the CSA packages that you offer, readily available, so people can have quick access to that information. And then more of the additional content. So your story, like who is your restaurant? Why are you doing what you're doing? What's maybe a chef bio? If you've had any press, that's a great thing to include with a link to the actual article. If you're a farm, you can include seasonal recipes. I think that would be really valuable to people to help them use the products in their CSA, and also just, to eat seasonally, which we all kind of aspire to do, and use what's current. You're going to want to gather all your branding elements. So that includes, colors, fonts, logos, anything like that, textures, patterns, anything that kind of sets apart what, your look and feel. And then for the restaurant specific, if you're going to be offering additional services like catering, or if you have a private event space, if you're going to sell gift cards, if you're going to offer online ordering or reservations online, those are things you can get that all kind of set up in advance. Know what you want to talk about, have all those details. How many people can you accommodate? What's your reservation policy? Answer as many questions in advance for people as possible. Basically, you want to have your social media account links created and ready. because we do work with a lot of restaurants who support local buyers and local producers, we also ask that they reference them on their website. So if you look at Pizza 44, which is a new business in town, they have a tab in their navigation called Local Purveyors, and they link to all the small businesses that they use, which is just a really nice way to kind of tie everything together. It lets people know that they are committed to Vermont growers, and that's a mission of theirs. And I think people more and more really appreciate that. So it's a great way. Plus, it's good for SEO because you have all these outbound links.
Yeah. And hopefully you get some inbound links from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Something else to keep in mind is that I think people often feel that if they don't have every single piece of content ready, that they can't move forward. And I would just emphasize that it's an evolution. So if you only have a handful of good photos right now, you could go with that. And if your entire bio isn't finalized, it's okay, because you can change it anytime. You can add your content over time and really build on the site. And, it's kind of important to have something out there that reflects you and can, people can learn about you. Don't wait until it's perfect, because oftentimes, even if it's perfect, you're going to change it again shortly thereafter. So, and that's the whole idea. The web is easy to update.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Question. So basically, just the idea of the website being a living thing.
Mm-hmm.
And how that, the importance of that, basically. And I think about ranking in search and the idea that adding more content, changing a picture, mm-hmm. will rank you higher, perhaps? Or how does that work exactly?
Yeah, Google actually wants you to update your website regularly. So they have ways of telling, when it was last published and when it was changed. So they want you to keep it current, whether it's updating your hours of operation, whether it's updating your photos, or if you have special events, talking about that. So there's definitely search-related benefits to keeping your website current, but more so, it's important to let your customers know that you're paying attention. You value their time. If a customer takes the time to go to your website and learn about you, you want to reward that with current information. So make sure your menu's current. Make sure, if they go there, you're not still talking about Mother's Day when it's the fall, and, look at it as it's respectful, really, to your visitors. Like, I care about you. You came here. I'm going to show you exactly, what's happening right now and what's coming up in the future. Not, and I know restaurants are busy and farms are busy as well. So it's difficult. It's a commitment to keep it, you really have to kind of build in that habit of like, okay, I'm going to check the website. I'm going to check the website and make sure from a customer's perspective that it is up to date. And so the last thing I'll say about the content planning is that brevity is key. And I think it's really easy for people to kind of get lost in what they want to say, and they think more is better. I want to say this. I want to make sure they know this. I want to add this, this, and this, A, B, and C. It's all very important. But the truth is that the simpler your content, the better. We have very short attention spans. Everybody's looking for scannable content, so we're really not reading full paragraphs. We're just sort of, our eyes are bouncing around and landing on, just the headers, basically, looking for the information we want. So I'm not saying don't include any content, because it's nice for Google to be able to index things, and if the content's not there, then there's nothing for them to index. But keep in mind that someone's probably going to be on your site for less in 2 minutes, and think about what they're going to, the first impression, and don't make them work too hard. Those are all really, good things to keep in mind. Like, I want this to be digestible, and that can go for your food, but also for your website. So there's a few other things to think about. And then I would just say that, Tara, how are we doing on time here? Let me just do it.
About 12:34 right now. So.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, good.
Taking a look at your website from whether this is now or this is after you've worked on it and it's launched, taking a look at your website from your mobile device and just asking yourself the very important questions, like, is this compelling? Do my photos look, desirable? Is the website usable? Is all the information that the customers are going to want, which is basically like, what is your menu? How can I contact you? What are your hours? What's coming up for events? Are they all clearly identifiable? And does it tell your story? Does it speak to you? Does it speak to your brand versus any other generic restaurant out there? Is it unique? And also, I would say, ideally, you can monetize your website whenever possible. So really make it work for you. And the options there are, depending on your business, you can have them make a reservation, which, brings in business. They can make a purchase, whether it's a gift card or otherwise. Our gift card feature has sold, our customers have sold over $1 million worth of gift cards. So that's a great way to monetize your website. And gift cards are, good to use year round. Everyone's always looking to give a gift. So I would say, that makes good sense. And if your website doesn't sell gift cards, but your competitor does, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. If you're inviting them to inquire about a group event, that's a good way to capture a possible, possible revenue. And also, if you have a mailing list, invite them to join your mailing list. All of those are possible ways. Same with a CSA, get them to sign up for a CSA. Anything to make them, make a commitment on your website in one way or another. And specifically for restaurants, if you can answer their questions without having them call you, that's the goal. So that particularly nowadays, dietary restrictions are kind of on the top of everyone's brain. So if you have specifics, like things you're willing to do or not willing to do, whether it's gluten or otherwise, mention that. If you're a farm and you have visitation days on certain days or certain times, mention that. If you have upcoming, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say something else to consider is like, ask your staff what kind of questions you're being asked.
Yeah.
By the people who come to your restaurant or your farm or your store. Just what kind of questions are being asked, and that may inform some of the information that you want to include on your website, basically. Or are people calling up and asking certain questions, that sort of thing?
Definitely. If you're hearing that the same questions are being asked over and over, then there's a problem. Your website is not, giving people the information they need. And sometimes it's really simple. Sometimes it's not so simple. They might have a specific question, but oftentimes I hear people say, I went to the website and I decided what I was going to have to eat. And then I got there and they didn't have that item anymore. So, it's an understandable mistake, but it creates a little bit of a disappointment because they took the time to go do the research. They clearly craved something you had. If your menu does change very regularly, you might want to put a note on there that says this is a sample menu. Items are going to change based on availability, just to set the expectations for people so they aren't disappointed, that kind of thing. So especially now around the holidays, make sure you have your holiday hours updated. If you're going to be open extra or closed particularly, make sure that's front and center so people can make their plans and not be disappointed if they try to join you and you're closed. And then, yeah.
Yeah, so I was going to say, it's definitely the consistency of information across the board, and but I know we'll touch on that, but when someone works with a developer, how do they keep their vision? And they may have a vision for the website that you as a developer have a how do you keep that communication? Basically, how do you don't lose anything in that communication? Basically, what kind of
Yeah, when you're working with a developer, I guess I would say that, communication is really important. Expectations are really important. And if you have a good sense of what they've done in the past, that's a good way to see, what you can expect in the future. So everything we do at Flavor Plate really is focused on simplicity. So if someone came to us and said, I'm really looking for this very elaborate design with a lot of, movement and, all sorts of extra features, I would say we might not be the right fit for you, just because we're focused on this particular, style of website. So looking at what they can do, and also, you want to have that, make sure you're being heard, make sure you have a conversation up front that you feel comfortable with, then you can chime in and give them feedback and make sure that, going forward, if you want to make changes, that they're receptive to those changes. And it's really finding somebody that you feel comfortable with. And also combined with that, the budget, right? Because if you're working on a tight budget, you have to sort of set expectations based on that, because if you're going around and around and around with design revisions, that correlates to spending more money. So, getting all the simplifying the process and streamlining the process as much as possible is going to save you money.
And I would also say, basically, just if you want to, there's always a timeline with website development. Mm-hmm. I say this coming from a place where of being on both sides of things. Make sure that whoever you're working with, that there are always milestones, basically, where you need to get all of your pictures or your content to the developer, or the developer needs to get something to you. As long as you stay on your milestones, you won't have. There's less likely to have creep, basically.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? So if you have a certain number of months where this is the start date, this is the end date, the more you stay on target with your milestones, and everyone works together and provides what they need to provide, the more likely you will have an end date and stick with that end date. There's always times where something takes a little longer than other times and that sort of thing. But I always think that, a developer has a responsibility to do a good job with their client's website, but also the person coming in needs to be able to offer up the pieces and the important parts to what the developer needs.
Right. I agree. And also I think a lot of times what I see happening is someone will initiate the process, and they move along in the process. They gather the content, they start the design or the development, but then the decision makers might not be necessarily on board with the intentions of the person who's initiated the process. So that can really slow things down. So from a business perspective, you want to make sure the decision makers, whoever is going to be signing off on this, are really on board with you the whole time. And that can be tricky because they're focused on other things, and you have to, keep bringing them in and get them to sign off on things. But things can definitely be held up. Say if everybody's not on the same page, even if all the deadlines are met and everything, but if the final decision isn't reached, things can drag on. So, I
mean, everyone needs to have buy-in right off the top,
right.
Because otherwise, then you go down the rabbit hole of I wanted this and I didn't want that, or
right. Right.
I mean, it just makes things flow a little smoother. I mean, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I would also say that, thinking about after the launch, it's so important that whoever it is, and multiple people, as we've already established, are comfortable using the website, because right away there's going to need to be changes made, and that's just the nature of the business. And so don't just think about how it looks. Don't just think about how it works. Think about who's going to actually be doing the edits. day and, from time to time, weekly, monthly, seasonally, however it is. Somebody needs to own that. And I recommend that the actual business owner owns that. And that can be tricky because they are just so busy, and there's going to be multiple people who want to help out. But they need to keep their hands on the technology. They need to keep their hands on how things work, what the logins are, what the usernames and passwords. Everything should be in the business owner's name. And that's just for safety, and that's just for avoiding headaches down the road when staff leaves and they've created accounts. It happens every single day where people don't know what their login information is. They don't know, their domain name is registered under their bartender's name and he left. So it can be a little bit more work up front, but just as the business owner, keep your hands on things and really try not to not go down the road of just being hands off, because ultimately it's going to just cause you a big headache.
So I'm going to just mention, we're coming up, it's about 12:45 now. So if anyone has any questions, or if there's a topic that you'd want us to cover, please enter it into the chat box. We'd be happy to answer any questions, or just kind of take a certain aspect or discuss a certain aspect of website development. So we can continue on, Holly, but I just wanted to put that out there for everyone. So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah. So what about, I didn't know, what about that idea of audience and visitors, the importance of making sure, we've got a question. Here we go. Oh, okay. Holly, what do you have to say about the Wix platform? And that's from Linda.
So that's a good question. There are definitely a lot of platforms out there, and they all, have their strengths and their weaknesses. Wix, I would say, is very robust in a lot of ways. It can be very easy to use in a lot of ways. My suggestion, I guess, would be to experiment with the platform. Try it, sign up for a trial account, see how it works, see if it's able to accomplish what you need for your particular business. So, because we're just focused on restaurants, we have a very simple, we're pointed in one direction only. We speak directly to restaurants, but Wix, you can work with any type of business. So their features are a little bit more broad, which can be good, or, can be bad depending on your level of comfort with technology. If you want to be able to pick up the phone and call someone, that is something you want to keep in mind. How is their support? Are you okay with just sending an email, or are you okay with being, having to search through the help index yourself to find the answer to a question? And then, of course, there's price. So Wix, I think, has a free option, and that is great for a lot of people because it's free. The downside is sometimes when it's free, you don't get the support you might need. It really depends on that right fit between, is it going to meet your tech level of comfort, and is it in your budget? So I would say there's a lot of great platforms out there. I would try them and see what you think.
And also the features.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you'll get a free, there's a free account, but you may not get the features that would best help you, or the ones that you want.
Right.
But I think support, like you were saying, support is very key. Especially, we were talking about WordPress before. WordPress has been around forever, and there are, so many websites with WordPress, which means, of course, since it's been around forever, you had security upgrades every month, and it takes a while to do all that versus you were talking about like a closed system. Mm-hmm. But anyway, yeah, I would say that depending on the software that you use, does it have the right functionality for? Right.
And like if some platforms offer e-commerce, which can be great if you feel like you're going to ultimately be selling something online, and some don't. So just think about what it is you're actually paying for, and if those are features that you're going to, are going to serve your business. Because some offer a lot in terms of features, but then the restaurant or the small farm doesn't necessarily need all those features. So thinking about exactly what it is you need and it's going to serve your purpose.
Any other questions? So we'll just keep talking while we.
Sure.
So okay. So beyond. Oh, here we go. Let's talk about the summary then.
I already kind of talked about it a little bit. I was just going to say, keeping your hands on the technology and doing your research, which is exactly what the question the person asked. I would say, get out there, try a few, see, you'll know pretty much right away if you find it challenging to use or easy to use. And don't be afraid of the technology. It's gotten so user-friendly and really intuitive. And so that's wonderful from a customer point of view. And, you don't need to have any technical ability really at all. You can just kind of get in there, and you can't break anything for the most part. So just try it out.
Yeah. I'm going to take back the screen for a second because I
Sure.
had a couple of questions. I had a little,
okay.
Let's see here. Let's see.
Do I?
You have to release it.
Stop share. Okay.
Here we go. Alrighty, hold on. Let me just.
Okay.
There we go. Let me just get my. I'm trying to. There we go. I'm wondering about. Let me just. What are your? Let me just. I had some things. So overall, what kind of after a site's been developed,
Mm-hmm.
How often do you check in with how often should someone check in with their developer, or do they need to?
I think that's a good question. I don't know if they necessarily need to, but it depends on the relationship, I guess. If as we already stated, the technology is changing all the time. So if they hear that something's changing or the requirements are changing, it's good to check in and say, where do we stand on this? Like SSL, for example, how are we going to handle this one? But I think if you have a partner that's a website platform, they're probably going to be checking in with you, sending out regular updates. This is what's new. These are some new features. This is what we've added or changed. I would say in general, probably the only time a customer reaches out to us or, is if they have a problem. That's the joy of technology is that there are bugs here and there. So when that does happen, you want to be able to pick up the phone or email someone and say, something's not working, or how do I do X, Y, or Z? So, regular check-ins, I would say a couple times a year, maybe.
Yeah. And, the other thing I have a question about is specific to social media. Mm-hmm. And how do you, we only have a few minutes left, but integrating your social media and your website, are there certain new things that are done? Because sometimes I'll go to a website and I'll be like, oh, I can click on the store from Facebook, or, oh, I can, there'll be some sort of integrated bit of functionality like, oh, I can buy this through Facebook or something like that. How does that work exactly?
Yeah, so Facebook has really expanded in that you can pretty much do everything basically from your Facebook page. You can shop, you can make a reservation, you can order online. Really you can add all the features and customization to your Facebook page that you would need to. And they've made it pretty simple, so that's good. That's an advancement, definitely, on their part. I would say, from a website perspective, I wouldn't rely solely on Facebook. And I think sometimes people tend to do that. Well, they say my Facebook page is current. My events are listed on Facebook, so I'm covered. I would just, caution them to say not everybody's on Facebook. That demographic is shifting, so don't rely solely on that as a tool. Try to keep all your information current cross platforms to get to.
And that makes sense. And you know, sometimes I'll see, I will see, you know, some restaurants will only be on Instagram, you know.
Right.
So anyway, I just want to thank you for, you know, being part of this webinar today for Vermont Fresh Network. And I want to say to everyone, thank you for tuning in this week. And our next webinar will be coming up in a few weeks, and it'll be looking ahead to 2019 food and farm marketing. And we will be speaking with Anson Tebbetts, Vermont Secretary of Agriculture, Food and Markets, Farm Food and Markets, and Lynn Ellen Schmiller of Agency of Ag and the Working Lands Program Manager. So that'll be pretty exciting. And I guess that's it. But like, Holly, thank you so much for coming in and speaking.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
I'm recording this. Yeah, thank you again. I'm recording this webinar, and we'll be having this up on the VermontFresh.net website, and where people can also go for membership information and other marketing and webinar resources. So, anyway, folks, thank you so much. And I'll see you all next month at our next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.